Hello friends, welcome again. Friends, in today's video, we want to discuss another very important literary movement which is known as colonialism. Friends, colonialism is a new literary movement which emerged during the 20th century. Generally, this movement is found in the literature of all the colonized countries like India, Pakistan, Africa, Japan, Canada, Australia, and so on. Colonial literature expresses the voice of the colonized people. Colonized people means the native people. Native people means the original people who are living on a particular country, in a particular country. Okay, it expresses the voice of these local people, natives, okay, against the colonizers, right? It mainly deals with the conflict between these two, colonized people, that means the native people, and the colonizers, that means the European people. Okay, it presents a kind of conflict, a kind of struggle between these two groups, colonized and the colonizers. Okay, colonialism as a literary movement emerged during the 20th century, and it served as the weapon, as the author's weapon to fight against the Britishers, to fight against the colonizers, right? We know that being in India, in India we had many freedom fighters like Subhash Chandra Bose, Shahid Bhagat Singh, Mahatma Gandhi, okay, and so on. All these freedom fighters, they also showed that their anger against the British rule. But at the same time, there were some writers, there were some authors in India who also contributed in this fight against the Britishers, in this fight to gain, to attain independence from the Britishers. And this weapon was the literature. The weapon which the authors used to fight against the Britishers was the weapon of their pen. Okay, and they started raising their voice in their literature. So in India, for example, we have some Indian authors who started writing in English language, okay, like Raja Rao, R.K. Narayan, Salman Rushdie, and so on. They raised their voice against the Britishers by expressing their spirit of independence, their spirit of nationalism, patriotism, and so on. And that literature became colonial literature, or that literature is also known as post-colonial literature. Friends, let me differentiate, let me make it clear that we have two terms, colonial literature and post-colonial literature. Colonial literature is the literature which was written while still the Britishers were there in this country. Okay, so you can say the literature in India which was published before 1947 is known as colonial literature, and the literature which was published after Indian independence 1947, after 1947, that literature is known as post-colonial literature. Okay, friends, let's first of all try to understand this term colonialism. Friends, the term colonialism, if you examine very closely, then the root word of this term colonialism is the word colony, C-O-L-O-N-Y. Okay, and this word colony was first used in English language during the Middle English period. Okay, and actually this word comes from Latin language. In Latin, there was a word called colonia, Colonia. So original root word is colony, and the word colony was used in English language first during the Middle English period, and this word actually comes from the Latin word colonia, and colonia in Latin language means settlement. Settlements means, one community migrates to another land, another country, and that community settles over there. That community starts living there. That is known as colonia, okay, in Latin language. That is known as settlement, right? And another word which is Latin word colonus, Colonus. It means a cultivator, a planter, or a settler in a new land. Okay, so the word colonialism actually means when one community, okay, it migrates to another land or another country and starts living there. Okay, it establishes its own settlement over there. That is known as colonization. That process is known as colonization. This process includes so many things which we are going to discuss in this video. Okay, so colonization means to establish a new settlement at someone's territory or someone's land and achieve power and control over the natives, right? You can just take an example like Britishers, okay, they belonged to Britain, but they came to India, they went to Africa, they went to some Caribbean islands, they went to America, Latin America, okay, they went to Canada, Japan, Australia, the Europeans, okay, they migrated to various different places around the world and they started settling over there permanently. That process is known as colonialism, right? A very great scholar, Kohn, has rightly defined colonialism in these words as you can see here on the screen. According to him, colonialism is dominating or conquering means winning a territory and involving the subjugation of one people to the other, right? So the process of colonialism includes domination of one community. The outsider comes to your place, okay, he dominates you and he controls, he commands your place, he commands your government, and then he starts subjugating the people, okay, then he starts dehumanizing the people or exploiting the people. That is known as colonialism, right? So all in all, you can say that colonialism means the act of dominating or the act of controlling the one nation or one race over the other nation, right? So this is a kind of political term also, right? And this process is done for political gain and sometimes economic gain, right? Now first of all, friends, let's have a look at the whole history of colonization. Friends, if you had studied history when you were studying in schools and colleges, you must have studied that it was during the 15th century that the pirates like Columbus, Vasco da Gama and all such people from Europe, they started exploring the oceans, right? And all of a sudden, unknowingly, they reached some land, okay, some lands like Africa, India, they reached West Indies also, some of them reached America like Columbus, okay. So these Europeans who were the white people, they started settling at these new countries, at this new land, and they started exploiting the illiterate native people of that land. Okay, native people means the local people, original people of that land. The countries like Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, Portugal, Spain, and all such countries, they started exploring the oceans. They reached at different places and they now started controlling and commanding those places like Africa, America, Australia, New Zealand, some of the Caribbean islands, Middle East and Asia and everywhere. So all around the world, these Europeans, they started colonizing the whole world. Okay. However, there was a revolt against these Europeans, right? There was a revolt against those who are colonizing their countries. Okay, so there was a kind of a conflict between the colonizers who are commanding and controlling their land and those who are the colonized people. Okay, those who are the native people. So, and this conflict ended mostly during the 20th century. Towards the second half of the 20th century, all colonization was over. The Europeans went back to their own land and most of the colonized countries, they got freedom. Okay, Westerns found that the Easterns are savage and tribal people. Okay, when the Europeans, the Western people, when they came to Eastern countries, they thought that we are more intelligent. Okay, and these people, the local natives, they are illiterate people, they are savage people. Okay, and so they thought that we must upgrade these native people. Okay, so what happened? They started rejecting their religion, their culture, their language and their ways of life. Okay, so the Western people, they thought they had a feeling of supremacy, white supremacy among them. They believed that we are supreme and these people are illiterate and savage and we must teach them some manners. We must give them a new religion, a new language, a new culture. Okay, but the question is, how did they get to know that they are better? Okay, who told them that whites are better? And Rudyard Kipling has wrote a poem. The title of this poem is The White Man's Burden. So they had this white man's burden. Okay, they believed that the whites, they are whites and God had given them the duty to refine the black people, okay, and the brown people. So they started controlling and commanding the native people of that land. Okay, and this actually, friends, gave birth to imperialism. Imperialism means Samrajyavad. Okay, it means they started extending their boundaries, extending their political power, political boundaries, which is known as imperialism. So colonialism and imperialism actually go side by side. Okay, as a result of this colonialism and imperialism, if you talk about our own country, India, you can see that we have three Indias. One India, which was the original India, original people before 1498. Remember this date, 1498. Okay, it was in the year 1498 that Vasco da Gama reached India. Before that, Indians were the originals. Okay, they had their own language, they had their own resources, they had their own culture. Okay, and the second India that we see in the history is the India between 1498 to 1947. Okay, so this period during which the Britishers lived in India. That is the second India in which we were influenced by their language, their culture, their religion. And the third India that we have now today is the India after independence, after 1947. Okay, but today's India, do you think that we are the same India that was existing before 1498? No, friends. We are colonized people. The impact, the effect of this colonization is still on our mind, on our life, on our culture. At many times, we feel that we are using their language, that is English. We are following their religion. Sometimes we are following their manners, their ways of living. Okay, so colonization is actually a process which changes the whole culture, the whole ways of living of the natives, right? And Lupita Nyong'o, an African writer, has rightly said that what colonization causes is the identity crisis about. So, according to Lupita, the whole culture loses its own identity. It creates the problem of identity crisis, this colonization. Friends, there are some advantages and disadvantages of this colonization. So, friends, let's have a look at all these advantages and disadvantages one by one. During the British rule, the missionaries, the Christian missionaries, they introduced new education to Africa and Asia. Okay, and as a result, the native people, they started getting better education. Better education system was introduced by the colonizers to the colonized people. So that was one advantage. Another advantage is that these Europeans, these colonizers, they brought new technology, they introduced new science and technology to this underdeveloped country, to these undeveloped countries. Okay, the natives were provided some tools for farming in a better manner. Okay, they introduced new crops like maize and manioc. Okay, so that was another benefit of colonization. Third benefit, third advantage of colonization is infrastructure. Okay, new infrastructure facilities were now made available by the Europeans to these countries. Okay, in the field of medical field, in the field of medicine, in the field of transportation and communication, they introduced so many new changes to this country which was beneficial to the local native people. Moreover, another important advantage was the advantage of language. Okay, the natives, they started learning English language, French language, and Portuguese language, which actually became beneficial to the people now during the 21st century, when we are now living in a globalized world. Okay, in which the knowledge of this English language has proved to be a boon, has proved to be a blessing. Okay, so that was a positive effect of colonization. But another very important advantage was in the local lands, in the local people, among them there were some bad, very evil kind of social traditions like sati pratha and all, and these were abolished by the British rule, by the European rule. Okay, so these were some of the advantages, but we must also look at some of the disadvantages of this colonization. Okay, some of the negative effects of this colonization are, the Africans. The Britishers or the Europeans, they went to Africa, they colonized the African countries, and these African people, they were taken to their countries, to their Europe, and they were forced to work as slaves in their houses, in their factories, okay, and they were not given payment for that work. So that was a disadvantage. Another very important disadvantage was the death of culture. The culture of the local people that was abolished by these Britishers or by the Europeans. Their traditions were destroyed by the Europeans. Okay, so they lost their original identity, they lost their original culture. Moreover, the Europeans took away most of their resources, especially gold, diamond, ivory, spices, silk, which is considered very costly. So these people, European pirates, they went to Africa, they went to India, they went to America, Caribbean islands, and whatever was valuable, whatever was very costly over there, that was snatched away from them, okay, and they brought these richness to their own countries, okay. So they used, or you can say they misused their resources, and they snatched away the richness from these local people. The natives occupied only inferior positions in the colonial government, okay, because these colonizers, they started establishing their new government in this land, okay, in which these native people, they did not get higher positions in the government. So that was also a kind of political exploitation or social exploitation of the native people. So friends, there are advantages, but also there are disadvantages of this colonization. These conflict between the colonizers and the colonized people is very well expressed by some of the very important writers of colonial and post-colonial literature. But the most important is a novel written by Joseph Conrad, and that novel is Heart of Darkness, published in 1902. E.M. Foster is also known as a very popular writer of colonial literature. A Passage to India, published in 94, is an important colonial document of literature. Things Fall Apart, published in 1958 by Chinua Achebe, okay, an African writer who is considered as the father of modern African literature. He wrote these Things Fall Apart, which is also raising the voice of the Africans against the colonizers, right? Another example, Season of Migration to the North, published in 1966 by Tayeb Salih. Okay, Midnight's Children, published in 1981, post-colonial literature, written by Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie is very popular, particularly for his satanic verses. Okay, he was banished from his country because he wrote something very ill against Islam in this satanic verses. So Salman Rushdie, again a post-colonial writer. God of Small Things, written by Arundhati Roy. The Prison Wood Bible, written by Barbara Kingsolver. All these writers are known as colonial writers of colonial and post-colonial literature. So friends, now let's conclude the whole discussion in these following points. Okay, number one, colonization. Remember, it began after the 15th century or during the 15th century, and it came to the end during the 20th century. Okay, colonization at a time began at different parts of the world. It started, it was, the countries from different parts of the world, they were colonized by different countries of Europe. It began in 15th century and it came to the end during the 20th century. Colonization around the whole world had its some positive impacts, and sometimes it had negative effects also. So it impacted the local culture, the local society, the religion of the natives, the language of the natives, and it created the problems of identity, loss of identity. Colonial and post-colonial literature expressed the spirit of nationalism, the spirit of patriotism, and this literature, colonial and post-colonial literature, was used as a tool, as a weapon of the authors to fight against the colonizers for independence. So friends, here we come to the end of this discussion. If you have any doubts or questions, do write to me in the comment section of this channel. Thank you very much.